Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Adventure Paradox podcast. This guest found us through Pod Pitch, by the way, which, if you're learning about podcasting and curious about all of this stuff, she also had a podcast, as she just said. This wasn't around when my podcast did this, but I'm so excited you're here with us today, Melissa Rodway. I will give you a formal introduction in just a moment, but first, for our listeners, can you tell us where in the world you're tuning in from? You've got a map of the entire world behind you. Where are you in it, and how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm great, Kat. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to meet you. And yes, I live in Toronto, Canada. So we've already had a minor snow dusting in the last week. So we're heading into winter here.
Love it. Here
Yeah.
too. We've got a little
Yeah.
of your snow. And how are the northern lights this week?
I didn't get to see them, sadly, in Toronto. It just wasn't going to happen. And I still have not ever seen them. So that's on my list for sure. Do you see
Mm.
them often where you are?
They do come around a little bit,
Yeah.
but this was the first time I was ever able to really see them with the naked eye and
Uh,
I saw the like red. And then when I took a photograph of it, it was like a fuchsia red and just,
mm,
whoa, what's going on up there? That reminder that there's maybe something bigger than us and I don't even know, was really,
yeah.
really cool. But I'm so excited to meet you. And for those who don't know, Melissa is a writer, traveler, and observer of human nature. Love that. With a background in journalism and a passion for global exploration. It sounds like you've spent years chronicling journeys with humor, honesty, and insight. And you recently had a book come out. We love talking about books. Your book is called The People You Meet. It's your debut, a heartfelt tribute to adventure, connection, and the lessons found far from home. You're also the creator and host of Fly Travel Radio and Adventure Travel podcast, with over 180 episodes. You've recently dipped your smallest toe into the waters of stand-up comedy. Okay, can we start there? Like, what?
Yes. Well, yeah, the comedy, I just did that. What year into it? 2024, I think. I was actually taking a course. It was the first night of a course for project management for my day job, and it was so boring that I started Googling other things to do, and this other course jumped at me. So I dropped out of that, the old project management, and I took this 8-week course where I learned how to do an 8-minute set and got to perform in a bar, and it was awesome. So yeah, it kind of combines all the worlds, of writing, storytelling, humor, and just having the guts to get up there and do it. So it was really fun. And if it is something somebody wants to do, I recommend it. It's a really cool adventure.
Ooh, I love it. It's reminding me, I also dipped my toe into a little bit of stand-up comedy at one point, and a friend of mine who was a professional comedian, we had like quite a few of us doing sets, all of us total novices, right? And mine was at the very end. And it was interesting because it was like people were kind of like laughed out, like punched out a little bit. And I was
Mm.
like, gosh, my material's like not landing. I asked him afterwards, he was like, Kat, you entered what we call the 99th minute.
Oh no. Yeah.
And when people have been in it for about like, you can kind of keep them going until about 95 minutes, hour and a half or so. But comedy
Mm.
shows don't go 2 hours. Like the 99th minute, they need a break. Like they need to. So,
Yeah.
anyways, that's my little toe dip story there.
Oh yeah. I went first that night. So I'm after hearing your story, I'm happy to hear that.
For future and anyone listening who's thinking
Yeah.
about that. Let's talk about humor a little bit though, because I feel like humor, one of my favorite quotes, and I can't remember who said this, but laughter is the shortest distance between two people. And
Mm.
it's such a good starting point to help someone disengage, especially like if their guard is up. Do you have a joke or like a line or some thoughts about humor that have really helped you in your writing and your journey about talking about travel?
Humor is just very natural for me. It was our escape or our defense mechanism in my family. So we're very sarcastic people, self-deprecating people. So I don't think a lot about humor, but I agree with you that it is a huge connector. So in my writing, that's one of my goals and I don't even know if goal is the right word. It's just a very natural way. That's how I write. I I'm very honest about anything and everything going on in my life, but I also present it through humor as much as I can. And not always. Sometimes I'm just like upfront, sad or confused or whatever. But I think humor is a really important language. I don't think any of us laugh enough. And one of the things about my book is that it's quite funny. And the feedback that I'm getting from people are that they just like laughed out loud through all of it. And it just brought them so much lightness and joy. But I think, yeah, like especially when you're traveling, humor is huge, to meet a stranger. And if you're an intuitive person, I think you can pretty quickly figure out what makes someone laugh. And once you get that first laugh, there's it's easier. There's a bond,
Mhm.
there's an entrance into a pathway.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So I haven't picked up people you meet yet. Will you
Mhm.
share a story with us? Maybe one that people have found funny or that you just like telling?
Well, I think it requires a bit of background. So this is a story. This is a book made up of emails. So in 2010, so this was a while ago, I went on a trip with a partner who worked in luxury travel, and we were going through Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and China. And he was researching luxury hotels and adventure routes, but 90% of the trip was backpacking. There was 10% luxury, which was very welcome. So basically, I was sending emails home to people about what was happening, what was going on, who I was meeting, seeing, doing, etc. Those emails got a life of their own, and lo and behold, 15 years later, I edited them and turned them into this story. So there's lots of things in there. There's a 3 to 4 day hike we did in northern Laos that was full of leeches and bees and horrifying circumstances and nasty accommodations. There's a night spent in a roundhouse in rural China. This is known for they're called Tulus, and the like ethnic Hakka minority community live in these places. So we spent a night living in one of these houses that's very rustic. It houses like 800 people. You're in very, very humble surroundings with like a light bulb, a some straw, some planks, a weird bed, a padlock for your door. I mean, I can tell you lots of stories. So that's what this book basically talks about every sort of anything and everything that happened to us along the way in those 4 months. But also like some stuff that's less stressful as well, just the usual comings and goings of travel and this super interesting people that cross your path when you least expect it, the people that you feel like you've known forever and more than some of your best friends at home. So yeah, tons of that stuff. But yeah, you just gotta read it.
Okay. Well, I hope I can get to it. And I see on your map behind you, and my great granny, who was a conversation in a interview earlier today, had a map like that, and there were
Oh,
more pins than map left. She'd been everywhere at a time when your ears would bleed from flying, right? Because your
mhm.
eardrums would pop because planes weren't pressurized.
Yeah.
Where in the world do you still want to go? And of the places that you have pins on, it sounds like a lot of that was from that 2010 adventure, but where do you feel most called back to? Like a place that really changed you, and then also where you're still your final frontier.
I rarely go back anywhere. So New York City is one place I will go until the day I die because I absolutely love it. Mexico as well because it's so big and beautiful, and I absolutely love Mexico. But to be honest, I really try hard not to go back to places.
Mm,
I try to go as, 3 to 4 weeks if I can and see as much of it as I can in that time. And then there's always, there's a big, big, big world out there. So to me, it's best to see new things.
mm,
However, there's parts of the world that speak to me more than others. So I love Spanish speaking places. So Central America, South America has a big piece of my heart and always has. And I think if you travel, there's an interesting thing that happens to you that you feel a natural attachment to places and you don't know why. So for me, when I land in that part of the world, and my Spanish is not great, it's not like I'm, just instantly infused. I just have this natural feeling that I'm home, that I
Mm,
get it, that I belong, even though I do not look like I live there. There's something in that, and I don't know what it is. And then you can go to other places, like actually what my book is about, that part of the world, Southeast Asia. I think it's very beautiful. I think the food is amazing, the people are lovely, but I do not have that same sense of belonging or connection. And it's not a mental thing. I think it's how your body reacts, how your spirit reacts, how your soul reacts. And I think that's a really fascinating thing about going around the world,
mm,
where you feel like it's kind of home and where it's a nice place, but you're ready to leave.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're making me think, and this also came up earlier today about ancestral connections. I
Yeah.
remember the first time I was in Italy, I remember feeling like these are really my people. Like I really
Yeah.
feel something different here. And then lo and behold, I married someone who's half Italian,
Oh,
So
nice. Yeah.
um just kind of that interesting question of where we feel at home. And we live at such an amazing time in the world, especially for world travel. Martin Luther King Jr. quoted a famous comedian at the time. I don't remember the name of the comedian, but you've probably heard him say this. He said, "We live in a world where we can hick in Los Angeles and cup in New York," right?
Mhm.
And I mean, 100 years ago, or even a few hundred years ago, Columbus, like, you weren't making trips took years,
Yeah.
So to be on
Yeah.
the other side of the world for a weekend or 3 to 4 weeks of travel and how it changes you. I set sail from Vancouver actually on semester at sea when I was in college, and
Oh.
we left on September 6th or 7th, 2001. So
Mm.
September 11th took place while we were at sea before
Mm.
porting in Japan. And that was a very interesting time to travel because everything was changing. Our first news on the ship was that World War III had started and New York City had been blown up. We didn't see any of the footage for weeks until we were there. And anyways, all of that to say, very curious about like why you chose 3 to 4 weeks because I'm right there with you that like having a longer period of time when you travel to really engage, and I think it's great to do short trips too, right?
Mhm.
But like that sort of homecoming sensation and something you said was something different happens when you allow yourself to have that time. And it's also, I'm getting like the image of a buffet where you try certain foods that you liked and you're like, oh, I'm gonna have that again. And then there are other things. This last year I've learned I have a pretty strong sensitivity to gluten. Go figure. Like I knew certain pastas, I'd be like, ah, it gives me a stomach ache. But now I'm like, actually, so does whole wheat bread, if I'm really
Yeah.
like paying attention. I'd
Yeah.
love to hear. And so it's the same with travel, certain cultures, we might have this feeling of coming home, but it's also like allowing ourselves to have enough time, maybe, to really
Mm.
arrive in places
Mhm.
and know what we do or don't like. Why
Yeah.
that time frame? Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's, even 3 to 4 weeks in a country is not tons, but we both live in a part of the world where, holidays are not plentiful like they
Mm,
are in Europe, unless you have a special unique situation. But yeah, if you have the time, I think that it's enough time for you to explore certainly certain parts of a place to really get a feel for it and to see a fair amount of things. And yeah, I think anything less is fine too. But for me, that's the sweet spot of like really feeling like I was kind of like I was there, like
mm,
I understand it, that I get it. And it's also a selfish thing. It's like I want to see enough of it that I don't feel like I have to go back. I've had trips where you have a too like it's too little. So you're just
mm,
like, oh, I don't think I saw enough. I need to come back. And who's got the time to be revisiting places? I do not, to be honest. Like my list is long and vast. And yeah, I want to feel like I'm walking away feeling satiated from
mm,
from a place, and also knowing, is it a place that resonated with me or not? You know, sometimes the first few days you're even like, what am I doing here? The first 24 hours to 36 hours, sometimes you wake up in places going, what have I done? And
Mm,
then by day two, you're just like, oh my goodness, I love this. What a beautiful place. Everything's, you know, falling into place as it should. But it takes time, right? To like even let go of your own schedules and boundaries and your life back home. I mean, that doesn't, you don't always wake up and the next day you're right in it. So I think
mm.
there's a time, a process there to like let things go and let new things in. And yeah,
Yeah, for sure. I always say there's the trip before the
yeah.
trip, and then the trip after the trip, you
Oh,
know?
after the trip, it's full of tears for me. But
Mm,
interesting to what you were saying earlier, because I interviewed somebody on my show who believed in past lives. And so we had a huge conversation about this whole topic about why we like connect with places and why we don't. And long story short, he is very much into that world of like esoteric beliefs and everything. And he was like, if you don't connect with a place, it's because in your past life you did not spend enough time there
mm,
or something terrible happened to you there.
mm,
This guy was fascinating and he lives very much by whatever feelings are coming his way. Like he was driving home in Toronto one day and he said instantly he felt like he had to go to India within like the end of the week. And he
mm,
went. That's like how he's guided. And I said, well, what happened to you in India that made you realize that you were supposed to be there? And he's like, well, I can't tell you on the radio. So I mean, it's quite fascinating, right? How people feel connected to certain places and why they have to be there.
mm. Well, and I think also that deep knowing, like that
Yeah,
intuition and
yeah,
being able to listen to it, not
yeah,
everybody is able to. We like shut it down or override or whatever it is.
yeah.
And I think that's pretty interesting. You
Yeah,
know,
super interesting.
one of the things I know you talk about a lot is this idea of travel burnout, but also travel with purpose.
Mhm.
I can't see Africa behind you, but I'm guessing you've been there. And
No, I haven't.
oh, interesting. Is that your final frontier? I'm curious.
Yeah, I was supposed to go a couple of years ago and I got hurt. So yeah, that's on my list for sure.
Well,
Yes.
a friend of mine I went to high school with, it's making me think of this story of his that his wife actually shared on social media. And she said something to the effect of, ever since I've met this man, who again was a classmate of mine in high school, I've known a few things about him, that we would live on this ranch in Wyoming, that uh, in the year 2023, I think, 21, 22, 23, I don't remember exactly what year it was, we would go to Egypt and recreate the photograph that his grandparents created in front of the pyramids with two camels and a horse in 1923. The 100-year mark,
Wow.
And
Yeah.
they did that, right? They like showed
Mhm.
both images. And I thought, how fascinating again that now, and especially for these next 100 years of travelers, we live in a place where those who came before us might or might not have been and had perspectives on from their perspective in the 20s or the 30s or the 40s and now, and so on. And so
Yeah.
I'm just curious, this idea of traveling with purpose to a place,
Mhm.
whether it's a historical purpose or a future purpose or like Dubai has all these weird, interesting things going on, like indoor snowboarding and all kinds of interesting stuff. Just what do you think about when you talk about traveling with purpose? Like, what purposes are you pursuing?
Yeah, so for me, that's something I learned on this trip, what the book is about, the people you meet. So that was a 4 month trip, and after about 3 or 4 weeks, and so there again, it's that 3 or 4 week thing is popping up. I started to get a little restless, because I was 35 at the time, and I think the days of just like traveling for the sake of traveling and hanging out had kind of when they were starting to be lost on me. And
Mm,
my partner, he had a purpose. He was making all these business connections with people, and I met them too, but his was way more important, like, his future business, connecting with these hotels, et cetera, et cetera. So he was on a real mission, and I didn't have that same, I was just a tag along. So that's where I started to realize that, and I had done a lot of that, like just, hanging out, whatever. That's when I started to realize that I could no longer function like that for a long period of time. So that's how this book actually started, where I needed to find something to do. So on like long train rides and bus rides, sometimes 18 hours, sometimes 36 hours, I started crafting these stories in my head about what we were seeing and doing. And then once a week, I would fire them off through emails to people. And that became kind of my purpose throughout the rest of those months to like
Mm,
keep my brain going, give me something. And I mean, I should have, it was 2010. It was like the time of blogging. So if I had been really smart, I would have been doing that. But it is what it is. And, there's a lot of things we said in 2010 that you can't say now. So a part of me is quite relieved that I held on to this stuff and edited it later. I would have been
mm,
canceled pretty quickly, I have a feeling.
mm,
But what I learned from that moving forward, for me now, there's a lot of ways to now travel with purpose. It could be volunteering, it could be anything and everything. But for me, I'm into active travel. So if I'm going to go somewhere now, it's not just to like do the usual travel. It's to do a cycling trip, to do a hiking trip, to, move by my own steam, to get exercise. That's my mission. I can do a little bit of the other stuff on the side, the sightseeing, whatever, but that's my preference now.
I love that. And so I think, what I'm hearing is like for you now, the purpose is about being active, but the
Yeah.
roots of that came from being kind of on someone else's trip and
Yeah.
recognizing I'm gonna have to find my own purpose here because he's working.
Yeah,
And
totally.
like I've got this uh desire to create and share and do something with this experience of being
Yes,
alive as I move through space as a traveler. I
totally.
remember I think I was in North or South Dakota in the airport, and they had a sign that said something like, "Aren't we all just passing through?" And I've never to this day forgotten that. The other thing that was interesting, I had like a long layover there. I don't remember where I was going or what was going on, but they had a chapel in the airport. And it was
Mhm.
really interesting because it was this like room, kind of like a side wing, and it had pews and, Bibles, but it also had pillows and different, like, it had all religions from all
Mhm.
around the world in a sacred space. It like showed which direction is it Mecca was, it was really, really fascinating for me, and also just acknowledging wherever we are in the world, whatever is going on, ultimately we're all just passing through, and we are
Yeah.
meeting people every day. Whether we're at home, we might be in a season where we're grounded, like in the pandemic or something like that. I'd love to hear about travel burnout. I know this is another one
Mhm.
of your big topics, and
Mhm.
the comeback maybe after the pandemic or after a long season of people not being able to travel as a travel writer. What's your perspective on that?
So I learned about travel burnout through my 4-month trip. I remember being in northern Laos, I think, and in a very, very rural area. And I had met this woman who was probably in her 50s at that time, and she was a legend. She had done everything, traveled more than anyone I knew. Had her daughter with her on this trip, and she was just super, super inspiring. And she looked over at these two girls that were like 25 backpackers, and she watched them for a minute, and then she said to me, they need to go home.
Mm,
And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, the trip, they're done, they are so done. And then we had this really interesting conversation about knowing when it's time to go home.
mm,
And there's a lot of travel judgment, I think, on the backpacking trail sometimes.
mm,
Who's been to more countries, who's been on the road longer, who's got more stamps, who's done what. And I've always hated that. I think it can also bleed into what type of travel you do. Do you take group trips? Do you do this? Are you in a city? It's so silly because we all are built differently and we all have to do what speaks to us. And as long as you're out there and you're not harming the world or people, then I don't know what it matters, you know? Anyways, that's an aside. So So that was really interesting to me. So she's like, yeah, sometimes it's over and it's done and you've got to admit it. And that
Mm,
happened to me on this trip because in the beginning it was open-ended and my partner at the time stayed, he was on the road for 9 months. I left after 4 and I was done. I
mhm,
I couldn't take in anything else. I was getting angry, I was irritated, I was overtired, and nothing was interesting anymore. And thank God I wasn't 25, and at 35 I could say it's time. I'm ready to go. And then you appreciate things so much more. And when you get home, you can appreciate what you have done and you rejuvenate and you go again whenever that time is. But I think that if you, the longer you stay in that place where you're really unhappy, then that's a poor reflection on your trip. You know, like you come
mm,
home and you kind of hate it. I mean, I've never hated any trip, but I think you know what I mean. You know, if you're not in a good spot, then, and sometimes, you know, the world has changed where nowadays if you're not in a good spot and you have the time, you can like stay somewhere and sleep and regroup and maybe do some volunteer work or do whatever, but that wasn't an option at that time for me. And it was over, it was time to go. So I have like really incorporated that learning into my life now. Like 2 years ago I took a year off, I was 48, and instead of doing like months and months and months, I would go away for up to 2 months and come home and just have a few weeks to like recharge, regroup, um, marinate in what I had done. And then I
mhm.
would go out again with fresh eyes, fresh laundry, fresh everything, you know, and I think it's important.
Oh, so important. And I'm so glad you brought it up because I think it's something a lot of travelers don't talk about
No.
is like knowing when to call it, which
Yeah.
really comes from often the wisdom of experience, right? Knowing when is it time to go
Mhm.
home, as you
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And I think the other side of that is that really challenging space of, oh my God, I'm so ready to go home. But for whatever reason, your flight was canceled, or I mean, I remember
Mm.
getting a bonus 6 days in New York City, as a matter of fact, when
Oh,
flights were all shut down and all of these different things, and really recognizing that endurance you have to build while traveling of even when you're really, really ready, like you're
yeah.
done.
Yeah.
There may be times for whatever reason you have to step into that space of waiting and
Yes.
longing and trusting that, the flights are going to take off again when they're supposed to. And this is very apropos because lots of interesting things might be happening with flights through the holiday season in this particular year, at least in my country,
Yes. Yes.
Um, but I'd love to hear you tell us a little bit more about Fly Travel Radio. I see it's
Mm.
capital FLY. I'm wondering, is that an acronym, or will you just tell us a little bit more about your show?
Yes, not an acronym, just a big bold word, fly. So for me, yeah, I took that trip in 2010. I came home, tried to, I quit my job to do it, so I don't recommend that to anybody, but we've all been there. And then I had to rebuild my life. So that started from just volunteering at a radio station, and I just, yeah, they didn't have a travel show and I didn't have any money for a few years, so that was my way of traveling without traveling. So I created the show in 2016 and just met the most amazing people and developed this awesome community, and my show was very much adventure travel. So one guy had walked the length of Africa for 2 years, someone else had cycled home from China to Canada, just amazing stories like that. And yeah, it really helped me to sort of keep my foot in the travel world without having to pay a big plane ticket, you know. So I did it for, yeah, 2016 till 2022. And then it sort of morphed into being more of a podcast, but you can find all of that on SoundCloud. Fly Travel Media is what, no, Fly Travel Radio is what it's called, and I loved it. But then I took a year off to travel. I wrote my book, etc. So something had to go away for a little while because, as you know, it's a lot of work. These podcasts, and yeah, I mean, the people who don't have them don't get it. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I joke a podcast is a little bit like animal ownership, unless you've had a puppy, you can't
Yeah.
really understand what it is to have a puppy or a horse or a child all the time because it's a
Yeah.
living, breathing organism that you keep, publishing every week to keep it current and get up into the
Yeah.
top 2% of all podcasts with 220 episodes like we have. And it doesn't happen if we don't show up and do it every day. Just like your dog
Yes.
doesn't get trained if you just leave him in a crate all the time. It's like
Yes.
you wonder.
Yeah.
So, yeah, hats off to you for all of the guests you've interviewed and the beautiful work you've put out there, and also knowing, again, when to call it, when to pivot. Um,
Yeah.
I think as we're wrapping up here, I'm thinking about a beautiful photograph I saw the other day of a woman on a horse, and it was her 1 year gotcha day. And, she'd put on a pretty dress and did like a whole photo shoot with her horse. And this horse was this giant dappled gray, some
Mm,
sort of, I would say, Clydesdale cross or something, had the feathers and the whole thing. And the horse's name is Everest. And
mm,
so for me, Everest has been, I'm a mountain person, sort of that like final frontier, growing up hearing about it and into thin air and all of that stuff. And um, actually, into thin air, I think is a different story. Anyway, Krakauer, I think that might be a different one. But my point is, right now, there's some really interesting stuff going on in terms of adventure. Jimmy Chin lives near us, the recent,
mm,
if you're following,
mm,
skier ascent and descent, it's been huge and just
mm,
really pushing the edge. And then I went to my cousin's wedding outside of Aspen, Colorado last month, and we got hung up in the airport multiple hours, all flights delayed. So, it kind of becomes your community, like you're building a village there,
yes.
walking
Yes.
around with my kids. And all these folks were wearing this 29029 shirt. I don't know if you know about this. And I
Mm-mm.
was like, what is that? Like, is this a zip code? They're all on a, what? And then I discovered it's this group that is climbing the altitude of Everest, but they're
Mm,
doing it, they're actually, I think they're doing it in Whistler at all of these different ski resorts. And so it's all up and then you download with the gondola. So it was 9 times up
mm,
Ajax in Aspen to get to that height. And I ended up interviewing one of these guests and like really talking about what does it take to train to go the distance and then take the adventure. And again, you don't know what's going to show up, weather,
yeah. Yeah.
language, like all of these different barriers, but you follow
Wow.
through. And so I was thinking about just Everest and just, the horse. And I think as we wrap up, like, what's your final frontier? Like, what's the one calling you out there that you're like, I want that. I want to bike blank.
Mm. I don't know. I did a lot of my big things in 2023, but Kilimanjaro was on there and I got really hurt right before. But it's interesting because that might have changed for me. I mean, leading up to it, so many people said if you do all these hiking trips, you have to do it. But now I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's so
Mm,
popular. There's everybody there. I don't know if I agree with what's happening
mhm,
there because of
mm,
the amount of tourism. So I don't have one right now because to be honest with you, Kat, they find me like I feel like you have this list, but suddenly something grabs you and says you need to go here, that you need to do
mm,
this. That's how I ended
mm,
up in Jordan one year, just like had it was never on my radar. And all of a sudden I'm like, I need to go to Jordan for some weird reason. It's just
mm,
something there's so that's sort of how I move through the world like this. And certainly I have like things that I want to do, hiking, more hiking trips, more cycling trips. But at the moment, I don't have anything that's going, this is the next big thing. And that
mm,
excites me because something will fall into my lap that makes me realize that that's what it is. But I don't know
mm.
what it is at this moment.
Oh, I love that. And I think there's something sacred about the pause, like having
Ah,
that space of
yeah.
emptiness, not being in a season of go after it, right? Like
Yeah.
that's that paradox is that, you might have the adventure, but then it's over and you got to recover and maybe make space for it and learn from what might be next. Like
Yes.
your vision can change. I mean, same for me. I'm like, the more I learned about Everest and listened to the beauty
Yeah.
of Everest and all these different stories. I'm like, I am actually not sure that I ever want to do Everest.
I
But
know.
I find it fascinating. And just,
Yeah.
sort of like throughout my lifetime as a kid, learning, watching and witnessing how I feel about Everest and these different stories and experiences. And I love interviewing people about them, and hearing about it.
Yes. Yes.
But does that mean that you're the person to go, or are you meant to just hear the story and then do something maybe in your own village, or wherever it is?
Yeah. Totally. Totally.
All right.
Totally.
I
Yeah.
know
Fascinating.
folks will want to find you. Where can they find you? We'll put all these links in the show notes, but where do you want people to find you and follow along?
The best place is on Instagram. So it's fly underscore travel underscore media. I also have a website which is flyrodway.com, exactly as it sounds. And you can find all my podcast episodes there. They're also all on SoundCloud. So those are probably the two best places at the moment. Yes.
Very cool. And if you ever bring yours back up and want to interview, I wrote this whole book about an adventure we took traveling with horses
Oh, how
and
cool.
a newborn and a toddler back and forth across the country, 6,000 miles. So
Good for
I
you.
feel you on the adventures and also how you do it, who you do it with, and the
Yeah.
beautiful people who will meet you along the way. So
Yes.
thank
Awesome.
you for
Thanks,
being part
Kat.
of our adventure today. Friends, if you loved this, share it with a friend, subscribe, leave us a review, follow along, and we will see you next time. I can't wait to see where in the world you go next. Melissa, thank you for joining us today and sharing so much wisdom. It's been really fun.
Thank you, Kat. Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, take care.
You too.